Hello, YouTube. It is me again, Larson, and welcome to my channel. This is day 2 of the channel. I think I've got 9 subscribers, which is about 900% more than I thought I'd have after my first day. So, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining us. So, today I'm just gonna, my plan here is just to talk about stuff that I'm interested in and. Without any particular agenda or structure. But I will say that I would love to interact, and if there are things that I touch on here today that are interesting to you and you'd like to hear more about or questions, just jump in the comments and let me know. And so today I want to talk about and I also am trying to not paint myself into a corner here by talking about the same things every time. So one of the things I'm really interested in is business and the modern household. And so maybe today, instead of I'll definitely do a lot of videos on the household and what that means. And I've actually done some teaching on that at my church, and it all really comes from a wonderful book by C.R. Wiley called Man of the House, which I highly recommend. But today I want to maybe just take a step back and just talk about startup porn and the corporate rat race. So what do I mean by startup porn? There's so much talk, right, about startups and entrepreneurs, and they're kind of idolized in our culture. And I've been a part of that idolization. I've idolized them myself, and I've perpetuated that as well. It's the American dream, is start a business, be really successful, make a ton of money. And there's grown up this whole subculture around startups. You've got co-working spaces, WeWork, and places like that. You've got these people that get together to like code and get shit done is kind of the thing. It's like, let's get together and let's crack a bunch of Monsters and Red Bulls and let's just pound on our project tonight. And like there's some of that stuff that I think's great. And there's a lot of it that I think is really goofy and heading in a bad direction. One of the tenets of the startup movement right now in the subculture is fake it till you make it. And look, there's a lot of wisdom to that in business. I mean, there's a lot to be said for carrying yourself with confidence, walking into a room like you know what you're talking about, and even if you don't feel 100% confident, there's a lot to be said for having kind of nerves of steel and stepping into a meeting and answering with clarity and confidence. And sometimes that means that you don't necessarily know with confidence that what you're saying is accurate, 100% accurate, but you do your best. And it's also not, personally, I think there's nothing at all wrong with in a meeting saying, hey, I don't really know. I don't know. Let me look into that and get back to you. So fake it till you make it is a big thing. This idea that you're just going to hustle super crazy hard. You're going to live in a garage with a couple buddies and you guys are going to work 80 hours a week and it's worth it. And all the success stories are people who it's all about how much they were bought for, the first round of investment was, $2 million and then had a series A and raised 10 million, a year later, and then a couple of years later had whatever. There's this whole sort of framework and this whole sort of mythology of like how this works and how this happens and how it can happen for you too. And again, I'm all about capitalism. I'm all about business creation. I actually think starting businesses is very hard. There's a lot of skills, unique skills there that aren't taught very well in a lot of places. So I think a lot of people don't even know how, to start a business. It's not rocket science, but it is a science of its own. It's another conversation, another video. We can talk about what the difference between executing a business and discovering a business is. But for the sake of this conversation, I really just want to focus on startup porn, as I call it, and the corporate rat race. And the reason I'm calling it porn is, it's a fantasy. You're living in a fantasy. You're engaging in a fantasy. And it's a different kind of fantasy, but than pornography. But it's the same kind of thing. We're sitting there lusting after success and money, and there is a whole industry, really, truly, there's a whole industry devoted to cashing in on your lust, right? And so that brings me to the corporate rat race. So when I use the phrase corporate rat race, obviously, rat race is a term that people are used to hearing in reference to business. But what I mean when I talk about the corporate rat race is, I think there's this whole myth around business in America, and I would love to dispel it. I'd love to at least get people to question it. And this is it, okay? The myth is that you have a great idea. You borrow a bunch of money from somebody dumb enough to give it to you, right? You're a small company. You don't have any money yet. You're pre-revenue. You borrow some money from some angel investors. And the way you get that money is you fake it till you make it, right? You tell a good story. You talk about how you're going to disrupt everything. You're going to create something new. You're going to be the next Twitter plus Uber plus whatever, And so that's the thing, is like, how do you make that pitch that proves that you are going to do something truly disruptive, right? And so you swindle some kind-hearted, wealthy people in your hometown out of, a couple $100,000, and you start a business. Well, what they are hoping you're going to do, really what they're investing in, probably more than the business idea, is they're investing in your ability to sell yourself and your business. That's the real thing, right? They're going, I don't know, I don't know if this business idea is going to work. Really, most startups don't work, but this guy, I think, has got it. This guy's got it, and I'll put some money on this guy, right? So when you look at valuation for a company, I'm looking around because I have a book that I've like never even cracked it because it's ridiculous, but I have like the authoritative book on valuation. It's like huge. It's this huge textbook. But the interesting thing when you dive into valuation, how you value a company, first of all, when you first do raise that money, you're totally making it up, right? And everyone acknowledges that. Yeah, we're just making stuff up. I don't want to give away too much of my business the first time around, so everyone's going to get a little piece for a set amount of money. Let's start at porn, right? I'm just reminded of Shark Tank, right? Shark Tank, kind of the best example of startup porn in American culture today. So then the goal is that you fake it, and you burn that money. I mean, you got to burn it. It's seen as a problem in the startup world to be profitable too early, because it means you're not pushing hard enough. That's the mantra is, it's all about growth. And so you light that money on fire and try to just grow your revenue in your sales, even if it means that you're heading straight off a cliff financially. That's the goal, is to just grow. And again, you're faking it. Doesn't really matter how you grow, frankly, and this is where free market economics and just basic biblical principles about business and loving your neighbor kind of just are jettisoned, because it's really not about providing a service or value. The whole thing has been reframed from me as a producer and as a business person creating value for my customers, solving their problems, partnering with them to help them, and providing something that they're willing to pay for because it helps them. That basic economic principles kind of been jettisoned, and now it's all about shareholder value. It's all about the value of the thing, the name, the brand, the business entity. That's the thing. That's where your ethical, moral duty lies, is building shareholder value, right? That's how the whole thing's been reframed. And so, if you're ripping people off, or you're not really providing a real service, you're not really doing anything special or helpful or unique, but you're getting people to buy things, regardless of how much money you're making doing it, even if you're just losing money hand over fist, if you can show, with that first chunk of cash that you are growing, then that's the goal. That's the mission in this first phase. And then you move on to the next phase. If you're successful, and that next phase is you start to get into some institutional investors, right? Like private equity. And what they're looking for is they're looking for a story. They're a little bit more sophisticated, right, than your angel investor. So they want a better story. They know that the people they're trying to sell to ultimately are going to ask more questions than the people who invested in you the first time. So they're looking to see that they're going to have something to work with here to be able to tell that story the next time around. And they're thinking usually, their sort of event horizon for investment is, a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years, 5 years at the most. But so that's the next phase. If you're successful at faking it and showing some growth, some sort of growth, and you've got a good story about disruption and you're going to take over the world, if you can do that successfully, in a private equity company looks and goes, look, you've got revenue. You've got some serious revenue, some growth here. Let's do something. So you move into the next phase, right, where they buy out some of your angel investors, maybe all of your angel investors. They take a bigger chunk. You've given away more and more of your company, and now the private equity company has a stake in the business, and they know, hey, we know how to sell this thing to an even more sophisticated customer. So again, we don't really care about your customers. We don't really care about the value that you're creating in the marketplace. We care about your the shareholder value, the equity value. And so we're going to polish this thing up. We're going to hire we're going to put some shiny units in the business. Some, a VP of sales who's got a good pedigree, and a chief technical officer who worked at Google, right? I mean, just whatever. Like, we want to just polish this thing up, make it look a little nicer. I mean, it's like a chop shop or someone who flips a house, right? They want to put a little bit of money into this thing, and they're hoping to get a 10x return on their investment quickly, right? So they want to flip you. So they're going to be looking for that moment when it looks like the trajectory is doing this, and it's been doing this for a little bit, and it looks like it might keep going. Really, ideally, they want to time it to where if it starts doing this, it's like, we got to wait a little longer until it starts doing that again. But once you're in the spot where it looks like, we haven't plateaued, but we might be plateauing if we hold this whole lot longer. That's when it's time to put this thing back on the market and try to sell it again. So again, it's another kind of faking it until you make it. It's still all about growth. It's all about revenue. It's not about profitability. As a matter of fact, in the calculation of valuation for a company, profitability is literally worth half of what growth is worth. So growth is worth 2 times in the formula for valuation. Growth is worth 2 times more towards calculating your valuation. So growth is really what it's all about. Okay, so then this thing happens again. You sell to venture capital, and really the goal for everybody is that at some point we can, in the most successful scenario, we can dump this thing on the American public, who are actually the least sophisticated investors. They've got financial advisors who act really sophisticated and talk a lot about what's going on in the market and supposedly are making great decisions. But the reality is, none of these guys, I mean, if they're paying attention, they're only paying attention to the quarterly earnings reports. They're not looking at, and people are speculating, well, this company's got hard assets and this company's doing, and there's legitimate, investors. I'm not trying to paint it completely in a bad light, but the point is that that eventually, all the smart people, the people who are smart enough to know what's really going on and what the game is, they're going to get out and hopefully dump this on a company that that wants to buy it, or the American public. That's really the goal. And everyone's got to keep up this act that this thing is really, really valuable and is really solving a lot of problems. And profitability, perhaps becomes more and more of a thing. But if you can go public, again, the whole value of the company is tied up in your stock price, right? And now it really doesn't matter what you're actually doing for your customer. What matters is that there's a perception of growth. And I saw this in the pharmaceutical industry, where it's like every quarter it's like, Pfizer bought this, immuno-oncology lab in California that's doing some crazy stuff, and and Moderna's innovating, and they're merging with some labs from Novartis and Boston or whatever, and it's really, it's the same people. They're just shuffling the deck to try to sort of create this perception that innovation's happening, and you want to get in because there's some big drugs and products and things that are coming that are going to create more growth. So that's the corporate rat race as I see it. And let me use an analogy here. And I don't claim that this is historically 100% accurate, so I'll put that caveat in there. But I'm reminded of, I read the Empire of the Summer Moon, I think is the name of the book, about the Comanche Indians in Texas. And the fascinating thing about these guys is they were like the most successful warrior civilization like in history. I mean, they controlled a massive territory, and it was really due to their mobility. They were a horse people. They didn't farm. They didn't produce anything. Their whole way of life was raiding and pillaging, and so they could, if I remember the number right, they could strike within 24 hours 250 miles in any direction, which in the time before any modern transportation, that's unbelievable. And it had everything to do with the fact that they were totally mobile. They had this huge, massive herd of horses, and you'd ride flat out and you'd switch horses, when each one gave out, and they'd just go. So the thing about it that was interesting about the Comanches is that they couldn't, if I remember this correctly, they couldn't really have babies. And you think about it, like, if you're on horseback, riding like super hard for really long periods of time, all the time, that's not super conducive to like growing a baby in your belly, right? And so as I understand it, their women, they really struggled with infant mortality and fertility, and so the only way that they could really, the primary way that they grew their tribe was by stealing babies from other tribes, stealing people, stealing women, stealing kids, and that was the whole strategy for the next generation. Was we got to steal, we got to abduct people. So it occurred to me that what I believe, whether or not the whole startup porn philosophy is good or bad, it does take hard work. It does take discipline, right? Starting a business isn't easy, and at a minimum, you've got to be willing to work your tail off, and that a lot of times takes, I think, it takes virtue. You've got to have discipline is a virtue, and you at a minimum, you've got to have people who are willing to work really hard. And we all know really, really unethical people who work hard. So I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but what I think is happening is, I think if you look at another analogy to compare with the Comanche thing, the public school system, the left in general, they don't have babies, right? They don't reproduce. If they do, they're barely replacing themselves. And, the whole gay agenda is as we know, fruitless. They're not going to have babies. The only way that these people grow their movement, and they've been very successful, right? And if we look at it, they're growing their tribe by leaps and bounds. They're doing it by stealing our kids. They're doing it by stealing virtuous Christian people's children. And so we're breeders for them. We're making babies, and then they're just taking them, right? They're just going, hey, we're going to just educate them for 12 years, re-educate them for 12 years. And we're going to just erode all of the other institutions, from the church to government to everything else. And so there's the strategy, right? The kind of Comanche strategy. And I think we're seeing it in business too. So I think this is happening in the business world all the time, all day long, every day. And what it is there's the institutional investors, the private equity, the venture capital, the stock market, the traders, all of these people are all part of this corporate rat race that is all about selling, casting this vision, this startup porn kind of vision of riches and massive paydays. It's all about the exit. You're going to exit at some point. What's your exit strategy? When are you going to exit? How are you going to exit? That's part of the pitch. You have to, from day one, be able to talk about how you're going to exit, who you're going to sell to, how are you going to sell your company. So I feel like what they're doing is they're convincing people with virtue, with work ethic, to start businesses, to just basically give up 5 years of their life, neglect their family, neglect everything, and just work their tails off and create some sort of value in their business. And then they are going to extract that. They're not going to create businesses themselves. They are going to extract that value from the virtuous people, because they don't necessarily have the virtue, right, to go out and do the hard work, the suffering, and take the risks. They don't want to take those risks. So they're going to extract that value from hardworking Americans and hand it over to their tribe, who ultimately are going to find the way to get the absolute most money out of it, and have no interest whatsoever in this thing being actually tied to virtue of any kind. And so we see it all around us. And unfortunately, it's almost like this is the only paradigm, in America. And even Christians, who I think should totally know better, are perpetuating this narrative, this myth that you've got to, if you're going to start a business, you got to borrow a ton of money, and and that's just the way it is, and there's nothing wrong with it, and exiting is a good thing, and you should exit. So I've already gone way longer than I intended to go on this video. I'm hoping not to do such long videos. You guys tell me in the comments if you like longer videos, but I think I should do short videos. I'm not a very concise guy, so I apologize. But just to summarize, I think what I'd like to sort of leave you with a thought to consider is maybe Christians should be starting businesses or buying businesses. I'd like to talk about buying businesses, because I actually think your average American homeowner can easily buy a business, a mom and pop business, without any extra money, and can be making money on day one, be profitable on day one. But you don't hear about that because that doesn't fit the startup, porn kind of narrative. Like that's just too modest, and you're not going to disrupt and grow and scale and blah, 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 blah. But I actually think that would be like hugely valuable if just a bunch of Christians bought a bunch of mom and pop businesses in their hometown and just ran them well. And unplugged from the matrix, from the corporate beast. So if it hasn't been clear already, I'll just put my cards on the table. I really think corporate America is maybe enemy number one in America. I'm a capitalist, free market, Hayekian, Miltonian, borderline libertarian on certain things. I love free trade. But I don't think the world we're living in is in America, modern America, is anything like free trade, and it's free trade that has been completely co-opted by a small elite group of oligarchs. the state has been used to, as soon as the regulatory powers and the big corporate interests get together, which they've been doing for a very, very long time, this free market thing's done, more or less. And so I think the best thing that Christians can be doing right now, in this crazy time, is pulling out of corporate America. And until we do that, like, there's not really, pull out of corporate America. Go, if you're not somebody who's got the constitution for starting or running or buying a business, that's fine. But go work for a good, ethical, hardworking Christian, smaller business, at a minimum. Stop. We got to stop thinking that, like, working for a giant company is like a good thing. Like that's a merit badge. Like, I work for one of the biggest companies in the world. We should see them like, oh, bummer. I'm sorry. That sucks. When are you going to go work for that? That must mean you're super, super low down on the totem pole. You must not have very much value at all. I wish that was more what people heard, but for some reason we've been trained to think, oh, like, you work for Amazon or Steve Jobs or whoever, like, man, that's really impressive. 'Cause again, we've got this fetish for, huge wealth and power. So I'll stop. I could probably talk for another 2 hours about this stuff, but I'm trying to keep these kind of brief. So startup porn, corporate rat race. I think I've kind of explained those two ideas. Tell me what you think. Thanks for listening and watching. Thanks for subscribing, and look forward to reading your comments, and have a great day.